Hey, can I borrow your phone for a sec? I just gotta hammer out some details for today's video. I'll have it back to you in a jiffy. Hey, it's Reviewy, and right off the top, this isn't a real phone, obviously. This is a wood blank that I made just for use in these videos, shaped like a Google Pixel. If you want to see how I made this phone, well, let me know in the comments below, and maybe I'll make another video about it. So here's my really ugly phone. You can see that thumbprint reader right on the screen. Handy addition, isn't it? In the bright silver color. No buttons, and you'll notice also no headphone jack. So this really isn't much of a phone. But it'll do for today's purposes. And today's purposes are for it to be a stand-in for a Google Pixel that I don't want to destroy. While I test out the Spigen Glaster Slim, it's a 9H strong surface glass cover, and the Fossman jelly rubber cover. Both of these items are available on Amazon. So first, we're going to take a look at the Spigen full cover tempered glass. Now, I'm a big fan of having tempered glass covers on my phone because I tend to be a little bit of a klutz, and I have dropped my phone now and then. So it's always nice to have something that protects that glass in the front that you can replace if it cracks. The problem with this glass cover is that the box is incredibly hard to get into. Like here I am hacking at it with a knife, trying not to bend the box because I don't want to break the glass. Please, Spigen, do us all a favor and make a box that's a little easier to get into. So we have all the accoutrements here. The glass cleaner, the alcohol wipe, and our tempered glass in its nice little protective sleeve. So we'll just pop that out of there, and look how bright and shiny and new it is. Perfectly set up for the Google Pixel, or for a Google Pixel shaped piece of wood. Now we'll just pop the backing off and lay that flat and stick that on. Now, one of the things I love when I put on a glass tempered front on a new phone is watching it adhere across the screen. It kind of cascades across, and it's really cool to see. You can't see that when you're putting the screen protection on an uneven chunk of wood covered in a bad spray paint job. So you'll just have to trust me when I say that this has adhered fully. And it looks like we are good to go. Next, we'll bring out that case from Fossman. And as you can see, this is one of those soft jelly-style rubber cases. It is soft, but it does offer quite a bit of protection for falls and drops and scratches. Keeps the back of your phone looking new, and you know what? For small drops, this is going to help. And looks like it's completely protected. Looks like that fingerprint reader was a little bit off. That's what you get for eyeballing these things when you're designing the wood blank. But our wood blank is nicely protected. I think you could probably take this anywhere and it would be pretty safe. But we're going to test it extreme style. First, we're going to take this knife. And just to prove to you that it is a real knife that does real damage, scrape it into the wood here. And this is just about like a pencil amount of pressure into the wood. Well, maybe a little bit more. And yes, it will do damage. But now let's see how that screen protector will hold up against this knife. So first we're just going to try to scrape it up a bit. But as you can see in here, it's got absolutely no purchase there. Look at that. Not a single scrape. So if you have this in your pocket with keys or coins, that's going to keep your screen pretty safe. But what happens, say, if that knife were to be dropped from, say, about a foot up? Do you think it'll survive? Surprisingly, it did. If we take a look at that screen protector, there is not a scratch, not a notch, not a cut. It protected pretty well. And I'm pretty impressed. I thought for sure it would shoot straight through this glass like a hot knife through butter. But instead... Oops. Yeah, that's more what I expected. So we tried to replicate the experiment from like a couple centimeters higher, and lo and behold, that was the threshold for the knife to pierce the glass. But again, it's a knife being dropped from a foot above. What do you expect? As for the back, we'll try the scrape test, and as you can see, it definitely marks up pretty quickly. But it's protecting the back of your phone and it didn't cut through, so I'd call that a win. As for our drop test, yeah, the knife went right through. But again, this is a soft jelly case. It's not going to protect you from a stabbing, but it'll protect against little nicks and cuts and wear and tear. So we'll put away our knife safely back into its holder, and we'll bring out our next implement of testing. That's right, it's hammer time. So I'm just going to go to the front of the phone here and find a spot to give it a tap. And surprise, surprise, it didn't break. Now you can see where the stab mark is. Some of those cracks have extended further along the glass cover, but where we made impact had no damage at all. And what about the back of the phone? Let's see how it holds up against a hammer. Look at that. You can see the pattern of where the hammer hit, but no damage, and no additional cracks on the front of the phone. So I'd call that a win for the case. We'll put away the hammer, and we'll bring out the next tool. This is a 1.5 pound hatchet that I got from the local axe throwing league. And I thought, let's see how the glass holds up against a hatchet. That was about a half swing, and surprisingly, no damage. It did not pierce the glass. I'm pretty impressed by that, but at the same time a little disappointed. So maybe it's time to go big or go home. We'll put away the 1.5 pound hatchet and bring out my big wood chopping axe and see how the glass cover holds up against a big axe. Yeah, that's to be expected. The larger, heavier axe did manage to crack the glass, but I'm not really surprised by that result. Now what about the back? How will the rubber hold up against the axe? Surprisingly, it did not punch through the rubber. I thought it would. It left a mark, but it didn't go through to the phone itself, so I'll call that a win for the case as well. We'll put our axe away for the next fire. And speaking of fire, here's our next test. Now this one is completely unrealistic. I don't think anybody's looking for a case or glass that's going to protect their phone against fire. But I thought, it'll be fun to test anyways. Alright, so on the first pass of the flame, you can see a cool pattern under the glass, but no damage. On the second pass here, you'll see that the flames do start to reach through to the spray paint, but only in the areas where there was already damage to the tempered glass. The areas that are covered by the tempered glass that isn't cracked are perfectly protected here. Which, okay, this isn't something you're going to need in regular everyday life, but it's still cool to see, isn't it? Give it a little more heat, and sure enough, makes for a hot phone, but a safe phone. Burn marks where the cracks are, but everywhere else is perfectly fine. And of course, it's glass, not plastic, so none of it melted. Of course, the question now is, how will that rubber on the back hold up against the flames? You can see right on the first pass, you start to get a little bit of warping, but not too bad, especially when you compare it to the parts that aren't covered, which start to bubble and boil right away. Everywhere else is still pretty well protected. And when you leave that flame in one area for a prolonged amount of time, yeah, you start to get a little bit of smoke. And then, of course, you start to get a little bit of flame. But it's rubber, so that's to be expected. What wasn't expected was that it didn't actually melt all the way through. Instead, it created a bubble of very, very hot plastic on the top that you definitely don't want to stick your finger in. Oh, why did I do that? Oh, that hurt. Ooh. Anyway, very hot, but it didn't melt all the way through. So it still held its integrity, which I'd say is pretty impressive, and yet another win for that case. So now we'll just take everything apart, pulling that rubber backing off. And as you can see, a lot of the spray paint came along with it, but I think it may not have been dry yet. But otherwise, the back of that phone is in really good shape. As for the front, well, I thought maybe I could pry that glass off of the front with a fingernail, but it actually adhered a lot better than I had expected. So we grabbed the knife, pried that underneath there, and this glass came off in one solid sheet, which is nice. It means that there's no shards that you're going to get stuck in your finger when you replace this glass. And underneath, the wood is in pretty good condition, so I have to say our combo protected this hunk of wood pretty darn well. In fact, let's just see what a stab wound would look like, some scratches would look like without a cover on it. Ooh, that doesn't look very nice. Ugh, imagine what a hammer would do to it. That's a lot of damage. What about the axe? That's some definite damage. And the fire? Oh, you better believe there's damage now. In fact, without the case and without that tempered glass, I don't think our fake phone would have lasted nearly as long as it did. So I'd have to say that these two pieces of protection are definitely worth it. If they can protect this hunk of wood this well, imagine what they could do for your Google Pixel. So if you don't want your phone to end up looking like this, I would highly recommend Spigen's Glaster tempered glass screen protectors. They come in a variety of models for all types of phones, as well as the Fossman Dura-T flexible gel cover for the back of your phone. They both get a thumbs up. But hey, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just telling you my review. I'm Reviewy McReviewface. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next review.